Most people think that they're healthy because they feel good, they eat clean, they train, they have energy, and they assume that everything is fine. But health doesn't really work like that. Today I'm going to show you my full blood work and explain it honestly. Not just the good parts, not just the markers people like to flex online. So hit the subscribe button, leave a like and comment down below. And now let's get right into the video. So before we go into my blood work, I want to give you some context. Because blood work without context doesn't really mean much. Over the last 2.5 years, I've tried to live as clean and intentionally as possible. Not perfectly, because I simply didn't know everything back then, but consistently enough to feel like I was doing the right thing for my health. Over the past 2.5 years, I've been consistently upgrading my lifestyle. I eat mostly real, whole foods, things like meat, eggs, fruit, and avoid ultra-processed products as much as possible. And I also include things like raw meat and raw milk. Animal foods are a huge part of my approach. I also train regularly, stay physically active, and maintain a fit, athletic physique. Sleep and recovery are also a priority, and I pay close attention to my daily routine and stress levels. And this lifestyle change also helped me almost completely fix my acne. My skin is now very clean compared to where I started, which was one of the first signs that something was improving immediately. And that being said, I know I'm not perfect. I'm very aware that there are still things I need to improve. And that's exactly why I decided to do this blood test, to see where my weak points are and whether my health actually matches how I feel. So now let's start looking at the data. So before talking about cholesterol, it's important to start with inflammation and metabolic health, because this is where heart diseases actually begins. So markers like CRP, homocysteine and lipoprotein A tell us far more about cardiovascular risk than total cholesterol alone. They give insight into inflammation, vascular stress and genetic risk, and not just how much cholesterol is circulating. So looking at my results here, you can see that my inflammation is low and well controlled. That matters because cholesterol only becomes a problem in an inflammatory environment. And without chronic inflammation, cholesterol is not the enemy. It's part of a normal human biology. Homocysteine is another important marker for vascular health. Elevated levels can damage blood vessels over time, but in my case, as you can see here, it's within a healthy range, which suggests good methylation status and adequate B vitamin support. Then we got here LPA, aka lipoprotein A, and it's especially important because it's largely genetic and not easily influenced by the diet. As you can see here, mine is very low, which means that there's no inherited cardiovascular risk signal showing up here. And the key point is this: heart health is driven by inflammation and metabolic dysfunction, and not by eating steak or eggs. When inflammation is low and metabolic health is strong, cholesterol on its own is not a threat. And this is the foundation that we need before even discussing lipids. So now we can talk about cholesterol. And this is where most of the fear and misinformation comes in. Because when people hear the word cholesterol, they immediately think of heart disease, clogged arteries and risk. But cholesterol doesn't work in isolation, and it never has. So looking at a single number without context is one of the biggest mistakes in modern nutrition and medicine. And that's why I want you to look at the full lipid panel here and not just one value. So one of the most important markers in this entire section here is the triglycerides. Triglycerides are a strong indicator of metabolic health. And when they're elevated, it usually points toward insulin resistance, poor fat metabolism, and a diet or lifestyle that the body can't handle well. And when triglycerides are low, it's a sign that the body is metabolic flexible and efficient using energy. So looking at my results here, the triglycerides are low and also well controlled. That already alone tells us that my metabolism is working properly. And this is especially important because high triglycerides are far more strongly associated with cardiovascular risk than total cholesterol ever has. So now looking at HDL, which is the next piece of the puzzle. HDL is not good because it magically protects you. It's important because it reflects how cholesterol is being transported and recycled in the body. And in combination with low triglycerides, a solid HDL level usually indicates a healthy lipid environment. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. I have 51 milligrams per deciliter, which is totally in the range. It's actually also in the lower half, which means that my cholesterol levels are very, very good. Then there's also LDL, which is probably the most misunderstood marker of all. LDL is not a toxin, it's not something that your body is trying to get rid of. It's a transport particle that delivers cholesterol when it's needed, for hormones, for your cell membrane, for vitamin D production, and also for your brain function. And LDL only becomes problematic in the presence of chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and metabolic dysfunction. And if inflammation is low and the triglycerides are controlled, LDL on its own does not automatically translate into cardiovascular risk. And in my case, when you look at the LDL in the context of low inflammation and strong metabolic markers, it does not indicate a problem, and it's totally in the range with 92 milligrams per deciliter. And finally, there's the total cholesterol, and this is the number that gets the most attention, even though it's often the least informative. Total cholesterol does not tell you how cholesterol is being used, transported, or regulated. It just tells you how much is present. And looking at my total cholesterol levels here in my blood, you can see that 151 milligrams per deciliter is totally in the range of being under 200 milligrams. So despite eating a diet high in meat and eggs for over 2.5 years, there's no signal that suggests increased cardiovascular risk, because it's quite the opposite. The markers point towards a stable, well-regulated lipid profile. And this is exactly why the idea that steak and eggs automatically raise cholesterol and cause heart disease doesn't hold up when you actually look at the real data. Because cholesterol problems don't come from eating real food. They come from metabolic damage, chronic disease, chronic inflammation, and long-term lifestyle stress. So when you remove inflammation and support metabolic health, cholesterol stops being the enemy. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a vital molecule doing its job. So after cholesterol, the next thing that really matters when it comes to long-term health is your blood sugars. Not just short-term spikes, but what your glucose looks like over time. And that's why markers like HbA1c and average blood glucose are so important. Because they don't just show a single moment or a stressful morning, they show how your body has been handling blood sugar consistently over weeks and also months. So looking at my results here, these long-term markers are in a healthy range, and that tells us that my body is regulating glucose well and there is no sign of insulin resistance or diabetic risk developing in the background. When your average glucose is in a good range, it means that the cells are responding properly to insulin, energy is being used efficiently, and there's no chronic glucose overload damaging the system. So next, let's talk about kidney health and basic metabolic function, because this is one of the biggest fears people have when it comes to eating a lot of meat and also protein. There is a widespread belief that high protein or meat-based diet automatically puts stress on the kidneys. But this idea comes from a misunderstanding. Protein does not damage healthy kidneys. It only becomes an issue when kidney function is already impaired. So when we look at markers like creatinine and estimated glomerular filtration rate, what we're really assessing is how well the kidneys are filtering waste and maintaining balance in the body. And in my case here, these markers show that kidney function is stable and also well regulated. There's no indication of reduced filtration, overload, or chronic stress on the kidneys. It's also important to understand that creatinine can be influenced by muscle mass, training, and also protein intake. And a slightly higher creatinine in an active person doesn't automatically mean kidney damage. It often just reflects higher muscle turnover and protein metabolism. Another marker people often worry about is uric acid, especially in relation to meat consumption and gout. So elevated uric acid is not caused by meat alone. It's closely linked to insulin resistance, poor glucose handling, and overall metabolic dysfunction. So when the metabolism is healthy, uric acid is usually well controlled. So looking here at my results, there's no sign that purine metabolism is an issue. This tells us that my body is handling protein and meat intake efficiently without accumulating excess waste products. So once again, the data doesn't support the fear-based narrative. A high protein meat-based diet does not harm the kidneys when metabolic health is intact. It's metabolic dysfunction, not protein, that creates problems. But now let's talk about my micronutrients, because this is where a lot of people get a false sense of security. Many people believe that if they eat clean, everything must automatically be optimal. Real food, no processed products, and good habits. So micronutrients should be covered, right? But blood work often tells a very different story. Micronutrients are what actually allow the body to function properly on a cellular level. They affect hormone production, energy metabolism, bone health, cardiovascular health, immune function, and also the nervous system. And even with a very clean diet, imbalances and deficiencies can still exist. So looking here at my results, there's a mix of strength and also weak points. So vitamin B here looks very solid, which makes sense given a diet rich in animal-based foods. This confirms the absorption is good and that my nervous system and energy metabolism are well supported. So now we're coming to vitamin A, C and E, which are also all within the good range. These vitamins play an important role in immune defense, antioxidant protection and cellular repair. Seeing them in a healthy range, it tells us that overall nutrient intake and absorption are functioning well. Now we're coming to iron and ferritin, which are generally in a good range. But ferritin, it always needs context. It's not just about iron intake, it's about how much the body stores and whether there's underlying inflammation or oxidative stress. And in my case, this is something to monitor over time and not something that signals an immediate problem. It's a little bit increased and not because of inflammation or oxidative stress, but because my body can't complement all of these iron that I'm getting. Then we come to vitamin D, which is also in a decent range, which fits my lifestyle and sun exposure. But decent doesn't mean optimal. Vitamin D influences inflammation, immune health, hormone balance, and bone metabolism. And this is one of those markers where there's still room for improvement, even when you're doing many things right. Right now, here in Germany, it's winter, so I'm not getting much vitamin D from the sun. That's why I probably have to take a supplement, because it's the only way to get vitamin D efficiently. I mean, I'm eating very much meat and animal products where also vitamin D is oftentimes in it, but as you can see, it's not as much as my body actually needs. Then we come here to magnesium, which is a clear example of why clean eating alone often isn't enough. Modern life increases magnesium demand throughout stress, training and sleep disruption. Blood levels can look acceptable while intracellular levels are still low. Given magnesium roles in glucose regulation, sleep quality, muscle function, and nervous system balance, this is an area that makes sense to optimize a little bit. My magnesium levels are actually in a higher range, but you can still get a little bit enough to really have the optimal amount for your body. And that's what I'm trying to have. So now we're coming to the most important part of the section, my vitamin K levels. Both vitamin K1 and vitamin K2, especially K2 in the MK4 form, are low in my results. And this is particularly interesting because I eat foods every single day that are naturally high in vitamin K. And this tells me something very clear. My body's demand for vitamin K is higher than what I can realistically cover throughout food alone. And this is exactly where supplementation can make sense, but only when it's targeted and data-driven. Vitamin K is essential for directing calcium to the right places in the body, into bones and teeth, and away from arteries and soft tissue. So low vitamin K doesn't cause immediate symptoms, but over time it can impact cardiovascular health and bone integrity, especially when vitamin D and calcium intake are sufficient but vitamin K is missing. And this leads to an important point about supplements in general. Supplements only make sense when you know what your body actually needs. Taking random supplements because you think you should need them usually doesn't help much, and often just is a waste of money, because without blood work, you're just guessing. And in my case, the blood work gives a clear signal. Food alone isn't enough for certain nutrients, and targeted supplementation is the logical next step. And the key takeaway from this entire section is simple. Clean eating puts you in a strong position, but it does not guarantee micronutrient perfection. Individual needs, lifestyle stress, training and absorption, and genetics all matter. Blood work is the only thing that turns nutrition from guessing into precision. So next, let's look at the thyroid, because this is one of the most overlooked systems when it comes to long-term health, energy and also metabolism. The thyroid plays a central role in how your body produces energy, regulates metabolism and maintains body temperature, and even influences mood and hormone balance. When your thyroid function is off, almost everything else eventually suffers, even if diet and training look good on paper. And that's why markers like TSH, free T3 and free T4 matter. Together they give us insight into how well the thyroid is being signaled, how much hormone is available, and how efficiently the body is converting it into its active form. So looking at my results here, the thyroid function appears to be stable and well regulated. There are no signals of underactivity, overactivity or stress on the system. This suggests that my body is receiving enough energy, enough micronutrients and the right signals to keep metabolic processes running smoothly. One important point here is energy availability. Many people run into thyroid issues not because of a lack of iodine or supplements, but because they chronically undereat, overtrain, or live in a constant state of stress. And the thyroid is very sensitive to perceived energy scarcity. In my case, these markers suggest that energy intake, training volume, and recovery are aligned well to support my normal thyroid function. That's a strong sign that the foundation, like calories, nutrients, and lifestyle, is in a place, although it could be a little bit better. It's also important to mention the autoimmunity, markers that would indicate autoimmune thyroid conditions that show any red flags here. That tells us the immune system is not attacking the thyroid, which is a crucial distinction when interpreting thyroid health. The bigger takeaway from the section is that thyroid health is not about hacks or single nutrients. It's about the overall environment you create for your body. Enough food, enough recovery, low chronic stress, and proper micronutrient support. And when those fundamentals are in place, the thyroid usually does exactly what it's designed to do. So now let's talk about hormones, because this is where lifestyle, nutrition, stress, and recovery all intersect. Hormones don't work as isolated numbers. They are part of a dynamic system that adapts to energy, availability, nutrition status, stress load, sleep quality, and nervous system balance. When looking at the markers like total testosterone, free testosterone, SHBG, LH, and FSH, the first thing to say is this: my hormones are looking good. They're within the reference ranges. They don't show pathology, and from a clinical perspective, they would be considered healthy. But within range does not automatically mean optimal. Modern reference ranges are based on today's population and not on what optimal hormonal function looked like decades ago. And if you compare those ranges to data from 30, 40, or 50 years ago, many values that are considered normal today would actually fall into the lower end back then. So while my hormones are technically in range, they're not really where I want them to be. And that's an important distinction. I'm not aiming for not sick. I'm aiming for optimal function, performance, resilience, and long-term health. Looking here deeper into the hormonal axis, testosterone production and signaling are intact. SHBG is not excessively binding hormones. LH and FSH indicate proper communication between the brain and the testes, and overall androgen function is supported. Estradiol is balanced as well. It's not suppressed and not excessive, which matters for joint health, brain function, cardiovascular protection, and overall hormonal stability. But now the most interesting marker here in this section is progesterone. Progesterone is often misunderstood, especially in men. It's not just a female hormone. Men produce progesterone as well, and it plays a role in nervous system regulation, stress buffering, and hormonal balance. And in my blood work, progesterone is elevated beyond the optimal male range. This doesn't mean something is broken, but it does signal compensation. Elevated progesterone is often seen in men when the body is adapting to higher stress load or trying to counterbalance often pressures in the system. This ties directly into the bigger picture. Hormones don't exist in isolation. Micronutrients matter, nervous system tone matters, and recovery matters. So the takeaway here is this: hormonally, things look healthy, but they are not optimal yet. The ranges are fine, but the goal is to move out of the lower end and into a range that supports long-term performance and resilience. That means there's still some work to do, not through hormone manipulation, but by addressing the foundation: micronutrient status, stress regulation, sleep quality, and overall recovery. So now that we've gone through all the major markers, it's important to zoom out and look at the full picture. Overall, the blood work confirms something important. The foundation is completely solid. Inflammation is low, metabolic health is stable, lipid markers look regulated, and there are no signs of acute diseases or dysfunction. And from a clinical perspective, these results would be considered healthy and actually optimal. But this video was never about proving that I'm fine. It was about understanding where I am and where I want to go. What stands out clearly is that healthy is not binary. It's not sick versus healthy. It's a spectrum. And right now I'm somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, doing many things right, but not yet operating at the level I want to reach. And there are a few recurring themes across the blood work. Micronutrient optimization is one of them. Vitamin K and magnesium are not where they should be, and both play a critical role. Another theme is stress and recovery. Even when hormones are within a range, elevated compensatory signals like higher progesterone suggests that the system is adapting rather than thriving. That tells me that recovery, nervous system regulation, and overall loads still need to improve. So the next phase is not about doing more, it's about doing things better. That means dialing in sleep quality, not just sleep duration. It means managing stress more intentionally, creating real downregulation instead of constant stimulation. It means supporting the body with targeted supplementation where food alone isn't enough, based on data and not guesses. The goal moving forward is optimization and not perfection, to move markers from in range to optimal, to reduce compensatory stress signals, and to build a system that performs well now and stays resilient long term. And this is what real health work looks like. It's not flashy, it's not extreme, and it's never finished. It's a process guided by data and not opinions. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video is this: health is not about assumptions. You can eat clean, train hard, and feel good, and still miss important pieces. And Bloodwork removes the guesswork. It shows you what's actually happening and not what you think is happening. And if you never checked out your Bloodwork before, this should be your signal to do it. Not to chase numbers, but to understand your body and make smarter decisions instead of guessing. If you have questions about specific markers, leave them in the comments. And if you want to see updates as I continue optimizing, make sure to follow and leave a like here on this video. I also made a whole guide if you want to do your own blood work, where you can see which markers you should test and how to exactly do it as I have done it. And it's completely free. Just write into the comments Bloodwork guide and I will send it directly to you. Health isn't built on opinions. It's built on awareness, consistency, and understanding your own data. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Leave a like, leave a comment, follow me for more, and just eat real food.